So welcome back. We are beginning with our second tutorial for the Hello Pumpkin by G45. This is a design team project with Country Craft Creations, and I'm working on page 1. So we will work on that together. I've got everything cut out, so I will go through the cuts and measurements as we go through. And I did make it actually a little bit more bulkier than I originally thought. Remember, I said I was going to do kind of a flat page, but I chose something else. So we're going to get going on that. I'm just inking the sides of these papers. I don't necessarily want to get them really distressed. I just really want to take out that white core. Alrighty, so we've got that done. One of the first things that we're going to do is we actually are going to put down 2 flaps, and you can see that I cut these for my flap. We're cut at 5 by 8 3/4, and then this is scored 1/2 inch on one side, and then another one I did cut 2 of those at 5 and 8 3/4, and I scored on the other side. So we're actually going to go ahead and put these together, kind of how we've done that with the other flaps. I want to put these together so that I can cover any of the hinges with my pattern paper, and that's why I'm putting them together before I cover them. So let me just, hopefully you can still see this. Okay. The other thing that I want to mention is I did miter the corners on each one of these, just because I wanted to make sure that they would not be, the cardstock or the pattern paper would cover that hinge. So I'm going to make sure that I'm putting this down just a little bit away from the edge of my pocket. So I'm putting the glue on here, and just getting this down as best that I can, centered on the page, as well as back from my page joint. Oh, that didn't work, did it? Goodness gracious. All right, let me just make sure. Yeah, okay, that didn't work. So what you saw there is I put it too close to the edge, just like I said not to do, and it was hindering that page turning. So I've got to pull this back just a little bit more. I thought I had it back far enough, but I guess I didn't. There we go, that's it. Sorry about that. Thanks for your patience with me. All right, so now we've got this like this. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to put our magnets down, and that's why I put an X right here. put that down right there. And then I want to put that other one on the inside of that so I can be sure that all these flaps are being held down. And that's why I'm also using the bigger ones so that I know that they'll stick, or not stick, but they'll magnet a little bit easier through the pattern paper. So there we go. What I'm going to be doing now is then covering this with our pattern paper. So I went ahead and I cut 2 of the pieces of pattern paper, and both of these were then cut at 4 3/8. So you're going to cut 2 at 4 3/8 by 8 5/8. I've also distressed around the edges. If you want to do the back of these with pattern paper as well on this side and on this side, you can go ahead and cut 4 of those, but I'm not doing that because I'm going to wait and see really how it comes up as far as how much paper I have left by the end of the album. Sometimes those inner spots I will wait to see. Maybe I want to add a pocket, maybe I want to add something else different to it. So I usually like to do those inside pockets at the end, or when I'm nearing the end of doing the folio or mini album. And then this one, and this is a part of the, I believe, the Patterns and Solids pack. I may even choose to not do any pattern paper on there, but to just do regular standard mats. I may choose to do that as well. All right, so now that we have those down, that goes like that. This lifts up like this. And one of the things that I want to do is to put piece of pattern paper down here. I'm also going to be putting a pocket down there as well. Again, I'm not doing anything on this side until I am toward the end if I'm going to be matting. So this piece of pattern paper, now I'll tell you, this is just a leftover cutoff, so this is like 6 1/4, but you could probably do it at 5 even, I think. But for me to cut that down, it's not really going to benefit me that much, so I'm just going to use this as is and put it down onto my page. So then the next thing that I have is I'm going to be making this pocket, and this pocket is 9 3/4 by 3 inches, and then I'm scoring a 1/2 inch on either side and a 1/2 inch on the bottom, so that this ends up being 2 1/2 inches. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to put my pattern paper down onto my pocket. All right. And then I want to put my pocket down before I put my other piece of pattern paper down, because I want it to slide underneath this pocket. Sometimes I do that, sometimes I put this on top of the pattern paper. Just kind of depends upon, I guess it depends upon the day in the book. And I make sure that my side of my pockets are down first, and that the hinge on the bottom is on top of those. so that whatever I'm putting there sliding into the pocket doesn't get caught on the base of that. So this is how we're going to end up putting this in, just like that, and it gives us a nice clean coverage, gives us room to have other things in there. I'm going to do this. You know what's so hard is that some of these pattern papers are so beautiful that it's hard to want to use some of the other ones, because these are so beautiful that you just want to use all of it. Like this one is one of my favorites. The plaid one is one of my favorites as well. I just think there's so many beautiful options in this collection. There we go. So then we'll make our cut tags to be put into there, but this goes down to here, and see how that goes down like that? That'll stay down, and we will be able to open that up and then open this up. And that's our page 1. We also have a pocket in here. I don't always put booklets in the pockets. I sometimes have to wait and see what number 1, what I have left, and number 2, what I'm going to be doing with the folio, so, or the mini album. But all right, we're going to move on to page number 2, and that is the next one that we're going to be putting together. And I probably am going to try to do a dual layout on there and a dual layout here. So let's get on that. Be back in just a minute. Hey crafters, welcome back here. Now we're going to go on to page, this is 1, 2, and 3, and I was going to make these a little bit of a thicker page, but then I decided to keep it much more simple than what I had done before. So let's talk about what we've done with page 1 and page 2. I'm sorry, page 2 and page 3. Basically what these are photo mats here, and this is pattern paper right onto the pages. I did not add any flips or flaps onto here, and so that's why I didn't do it with you, just because it was really just gluing paper down. So I'll give you the measurements. The pattern paper here is, let me just make sure I have it right. That is 3 7/8. So this is 3 7/8, and this is 3 7/8 by 8 5/8 in the length, 8 5/8. So each one of these is 8 5/8 going down, and then the width on those is 3 inches. And what I did is I took 2 different pattern papers, and then I took the same green paper that's a polka dot from the Patterns and Solids, and I put that onto here. Then the black mats, I cut 4 of them by 2 3/4 by 4, and put those down. I will go back and put some ephemera, probably right in the middle of this here, maybe at the bottom, not sure. So I will go back and add some of that, or some of the cut aparts also. I had thought about putting a belly band along here, a thin belly band, and then just put a tag over the top of it. I just didn't want to cover up all the paper. So I left it and thought you could put a small picture down here. You could put journaling down here to go with these pictures. But pretty much simple and done, and it works with each other. Now on pages, we are now going to pages 4 and 5, and I don't count, just so as an FYI, I don't count this as page 1. I call this as the inside cover and the back cover. So that's why I start with this first page as 1, and then 2, 3, 4, 5. So on pages 4 and 5, I did exactly the same thing. I thought I would just keep this mini album a little bit simpler than what I usually do. A lot of times I do different things on both pages, but I wanted to see how this would come out looking a little bit similar, not exact because it's different papers. So what I did here is I took the black cardstock and I cut for this top flap, I cut this to 6 7/8. So for both of these flaps, they're going to be 6 7/8. The top one is 8 1/2, and then I scored at 1/2 inch for the hinge, and then the bottom flap is 5 6 7/8, and I scored at 1/2 inch. And then I went ahead and put my my magnets in here. I figured because there wasn't going to be a lot of cardstock, pattern paper on here, that I could probably put the smaller magnets on there. Then I went ahead and did the same thing over on this side. So you're going to cut 2 of each of those that I just gave you. And we're going to go ahead and let's put those down and get this working on our pages. So the other thing is that I did not cut pattern paper for the inside of this flap and this flap, just like the other one that we talked about, that I like to wait till the end. So I'm going to go back and I'll wait till the end to figure out what I'm going to do. I may end up just putting in solid paper from the patterns in solid, so maybe putting like this peach up there. Probably going to keep it simple. I may add a pocket. I'm not really sure. But for now, let's get down our pattern paper and let's get putting this together. So this is going down, and then you can put pictures along here. You could put a nice 4x6 picture here, maybe some journaling down here. And then over the top of this, I also did, I rounded the corners on each of these. I have a 3-way punch, so I used the bigger punch for the black cardstock and the medium punch for my pattern paper so that it could look a little bit better going off the corners. All right. All right, that's going to go down there. Then we've got this one. And what I did for this is I took a cut off of this pattern paper and cut off 3/4 inch. Oh my gosh, this looks a little bit, oh no. Looks like I might have made this one just a little bit too long. Let me just check this real quick. Yep, it's just a pinch too long. So I'm going to cut that off. It's really just 1/8 inch or 1/4 inch off. I have it written down properly. I just didn't cut it properly. So let me just fix that real quick. So we're going to lay this down here. And I wanted to use something that was it's not solid, but it looks a little bit more solid to break up the pattern paper. So we're going to put this down to the bottom of this, mat this. You know, one of the things with mini albums is that they're so fun to make and so fun to work on, but you can kind of, sometimes I shouldn't say you, I can get kind of carried away at times wanting to do all those flips and flaps and so many of them that takes a really long time to complete an album. So we're going to leave that one like that, and then on this side we have some different matting. It's complementary to the colors on the other page, but it's a little bit different. And again, this is one of the patterns in solids. So all of the pattern paper that I'm putting down, I don't know if I said all the cuts. So all of the pattern paper, whether it's on the flaps or whether it's down, those are going to be at, or I should say the bases in here. I cut 2 of them. They were, let me look, 8.5 by 6 3/4. So 6 3/4 by 8.5. And then the top flap, the pattern paper was cut at 6 3/4 by 7 7/8. And the bottom flap down here was cut at 6 3/4 by 3 3/4, and then 6 3/4 by 3/4 of an inch. That's where everything was cut. So if I messed up on that first page and set of flaps, I'm sorry. That'll give you the measurements there. There we go. Let me make sure I cut this properly. Yes, I did. Good. I was afraid I cut that one too long. So this is a 3/4 of an inch strip. And that really complements that rusty red colors in there. And then we're going to put this one down there. Now any one of these flips and flaps you can put photos on. You can put mats inside these flaps, just laying inside. There's a lot of opportunities for different items. Or you can leave this all plain like that and put all your photos into the insides of these flaps. Totally up to you. So now that's pages 4 and 5. So the next thing we're going to do is 6 and 7, and then this is 8, and then the back cover. So we're going to move on to that, and I don't have that cut out yet. I'm going to have to go and do that, and then I will be back with you to show you what the next sets are going to look like. So I'll see you in just a little bit. All right, so we're going to get working on finishing off this album, except for the covers and updating the ephemera and things like that. So let's finish off pages. This was 5 and 6. No, I'm sorry, 6 and 7. And so I made them fairly simple again, and I did not cover the black. Again, I'm waiting just to see how much paper I have left, and then I'll go back and cut that. I will probably put pattern paper on these because I do have the solids left, and I think I'm going to put that onto the back of these. But I basically cut here for these pages. My pattern paper was 6 7/8 by 8 1/2. So let's just measure that one more time. I just want to make sure I'm giving you the right measurements. Actually, it's 6 3/4. I apologize. 6 3/4 by 8.5. I'm sorry. 6 3/4 by 8.5. So 2 of those. 6 3/4 by 8.5. And then these were 4 by 6.5, and then a 1/2 inch scored. So I cut 4 that were 4 and 6.5, and then a 1/2 inch is scored. And then the pattern paper on here, these were cut at 3 7/8 by 5 7/8, just 1/8 of an inch smaller. And then if we would go to this next page, what I did on here is I put pattern paper down here, just like I did on the other ones. And this one is 6 7/8 by 8.5. So 6 7/8 by 8.5. You might want to cut that at the 8.5 and then see if you need to cut it down anymore. Same thing with this piece of paper. This was 1.5 inches by 8.5. And then this is 8.5 by 1/2 of an inch. And these are pockets. This is a pocket in here. So I'm going to be putting some items in there. And then also here, there's a little tuck in there. I also am planning on possibly putting some type of mat or something down onto there. I just haven't decided what I'm going to do with that yet. And then onto the back page, our covers were 7.5 by 9. So this pattern paper was 7 3/8 by 8 7/8. That gives us the full coverage for the back of this album. And then this is a 5 by 7 photo mat. So I just made it 1/4 of an inch around. So I did this at 5.5 by 7.5, and just to do the border strips around it. And then I went back to these middle pieces, just the 3 in the middle, because they're 1/2 inch spines in here. So these were cut at 3/8 of an inch by 8 7/8. 8 7/8. And I did that first, and then 1 or 2 of them I had to cut down just a little bit. So I would go 8 7/8 and then put it down. If it looks too long, then go back and take 1/8 of an inch off just to see how it fits. Sometimes once these go in, they don't fit exactly how you think they're going to fit. So this is our photo album, and it just needs to be decorated. Mini album, I should say, needs to be decorated and some items added to it. I will make this cover. It'll be probably somewhat flat. I think I might put a booklet on the front like I normally do. I may add flowers, I may not. I don't know. We'll see what I'm going to end up doing. Sometimes it's nice just to have a cover, not have too much on it. So that is the rest of our mini album. Oh, I added this in as well. This was a 4 by 6 photo mat, and I did the black behind it, which was 4 1/8 by 6 1/8, just to give it a little bit of oomph. I actually wanted to put it off part of the page, but because I had this, that it all opened like that this card would have gotten in the way. The other option was I was thinking about putting it right here on this pocket, and I may do that with another card as I go, but we'll see. So this was added. The rest of this, I believe, is all the same from what we went through. So that is the basics of this mini album. The rest of the decorating, I'm going to go through that with in the walkthrough. That'll be the final video coming out. And I'm going to be also putting the measurements in the description box below. And I will for sure give you measurements for all the base pages of the mini album, sometimes with the paper, and if it's a pocket or something or a flap, just think of it as going 1/8 smaller. So if it was 8 by 8, then you want to cut your pattern paper at 7 7/8 by 7 7/8. And that's usually the best way to put your pattern paper down. Or another way of doing it that I've done when I first started making mini albums is I would cut it exactly same size as what my cardstock was, and then I would cut down from that a little bit, because sometimes I didn't measure right, and it's easier to cut down a little than it's hard to add to it. So that is all we have for now. This is our mini album, and I think it looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it, quite honestly. And I think that I'll be able to get a lot of nice fall pictures in here. And I'll be back though with the final walkthrough and decorations on this album. So y'all take care. Thank you for joining me. I just so appreciate the time that you spend with me. And let me know if there's anything that you would like to see again. I have one short video that's going to be coming up pretty soon, probably by next weekend. And then I will see you then. All right, take care.